Bingo. That's what the people came for, Brian.
It's
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals. The Tubs at the Club, the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I am your host, Dallas Hammer, joined today by brave, bold Brian Marceau.
Dude, great to be back, man. Sometimes breaks are good, even if it's just like an extra week or so. But letting basketball season come to a close. Now we got spring. We have some time to have spring ball actually rolling, so we got developments to talk about. Man, it's for an off-season-ish type of show, like I feel like this is pretty dense, but like dense in a good way. So I'm happy to be here, dude.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff to talk about. That's why the man in Moscow, Mr. Holding It Down for the Underground producer, it's Marten Heemstra. Marten, how you doing, dude?
Doing good. It's another week on the show. Finally got to go out and watch a practice for football, and a show we'll talk about here in a little bit. And there's been some other big stuff happening in Vandal Athletics too.
Yeah, big couple days for head coach Art Moreira of the Idaho women's basketball program. Marten, I'm going to let you take the wheel on this one. 3 signees announced in the last about 24 hours and change for the Vandals.
Yeah, 3 big signees.
3 big transfers.
Yeah, like it's
we don't often lead with women's basketball, but like this is a big deal.
So I'll be honest, kind of first starting off was the one that I had no idea about. Usually I try to know a little bit before. Usually I kind of have a little know just because I do way too much social media searching sometimes on these recruiting stuff. But first one they have is oh gosh, remember, is it Nevaeh Henley signed as a 4-year player at a Furman, I believe. I'm getting my right. SoCon school. Furman, yeah, because I'm reading off the roster right now. I believe she played at a not a prep school, Montverde Academy out of Florida, if I'm looking at that right. Yeah, Montverde. Yeah, I'll look at that right now. But she's by way of Seattle, so originally from the Pacific Northwest. Always good to get more local local-ish people back to the Northwest, not just let them stay far away. Uh Good job there, Kevin. Um Brian, you got anything you want to talk about her? I know you said you did a little searching.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, so Idaho, we talked about this at the end of the season episode. Idaho had a promising season, but there's a lot of players, a lot of production that needs to be. We need to find where it's going to come from. We know Hope Hassman's coming back. She was the number 2 scorer. Ron, we'll get to football talk in a minute. I promise it's going to be the majority of the show, but this matters. So Hope Hassman's the number 2 scorer from last year. She's the top returning scorer this year. There's a first team all Big Sky level production to replace, as well as a couple of the other like top 4 scorers on the team. Nevaeh Henley is where some of the wing production is going to come. Honestly, kind of all these signees, in some ways, I'm floored about coming to Moscow, in a good way, I guess. So Henley, for her last 2 seasons at Furman, she's been averaging double figures. She played just 15 games this season, partially due to injury, averaged 11.7 points per game, played the entire season, 23-24, and put up 10.8 points a game.
Sorry, I forgot to add this mention because I'm reading the releases too. She was all conference in her last full year for Furman, so that's nothing to just write home about, nothing to just brush aside.
Yeah. An all conference player transfers in, and this season in her action, she shot 41% from 3. 41% from the field, just under 36% from 3. So that's where some of the wing production is going to come from. So I one, just on paper, she has produced at a similarly sized conference. That's a big piece for Idaho to have on their team for next year.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of big, next one I'm going to talk about is Lorena Barbosa, 6'5", post player. She's probably going to take I don't know how to say it. Probably looking at maybe a Rosie-ish type replacement kind of player. Big, like I said, 6'5". She is, I think, the tallest they've had since Nara Solo back before COVID times, if I'm remembering right. So my stuff might be dating me. It might be even Izzy Haddon, but I could be wrong on that. She hasn't played a lot over the past couple years. I know she's been dealing with some injuries, it looks like, so I don't know the whole details. I don't want to break any HIPAA violations here, but like it's one that like I always great to have her. Someone that size doesn't come around all that often to schools in the Big Sky, but it's another great player that I never would have thought I would have seen in Idaho.
Yeah, so with Barbosa, like, ignore the stats because they don't jump off the page. It's the potential of what Idaho got here. Before, when Barbosa was senior in high school, before she signed with San Francisco, she was down to San Francisco or Oregon as her potential school. So like the raw athletic talent is there. Why'd she come to Idaho? She broke her back as a freshman. So she's had injuries related to that over the last couple of years. So that's where the risk is. She's not yet 100% healthy. So, like there may be things like minute restrictions, and, throw an asterisk about how she recovers completely by the time the season starts. But this is
a rotational piece like that is great to have.
Well, no, like she has raw talent to be more than a rotational piece. Like if you've watched any like tape on her, she's 6'4", 6'5", and she has a pretty good face-up game. It's like if she can be healthy, she's a very good Big Sky athlete who has, center size, but some wing skills. When I say face-up, I mean from like 15 feet out, as kind of where you're looking at. But if she can be healthy, that's a pretty big deal for any Big Sky team would have taken a flyer on Barbosa. The fact that Idaho got her is a big deal. I'll let you talk about the next signing in a second, because these two signings together, they could absolutely change the face of who's at the top of Big Sky basketball.
I think that's kind of as the outsider looking in, who pays the least amount of attention to Vandal basketball. Again, guys, hand-up basketball is just not my big thing. I mean, when I'm recognizing these players from the WCC, that's a pretty big sign that the art is going for the fences on this one.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
so what I've been told is she'll be ready. She's expected to be ready to play day one. Like she doesn't have restrictions right now. It's just that type of injury history. It's a different type of monitoring. But back to Marten for the biggest,
Yeah.
as in like huge on paper signing.
Oh yeah. This one, when I had first kind of found out, I was absolutely surprised at how Idaho landed someone like this caliber out of the WCC. Sorry, I forgot to mention her name. Deborah Dos Santos.
Deborah Dos Santos.
Deb, Deborah Dos Santos. Yeah. Her last full season, last played, I think was January this year, but her last full season, she had 15 and 10 a game, and I, wow, she is. If she's a walking double double every game for Big Sky, that is going to be great to have for this rotation. And like I think I've kind of mentioned, like it's not a rebuild with this women's basketball team. It is reloading and then some with who they have with Deborah
Yeah,
today.
Dos Santos is going to be a post. She's in Moscow because she blew her ACL at San Francisco this last season. However, what we've been told is it was just an ACL tear. There's no other injury issues. So you should expect by the start of the season she's going to be ready to play with no real restrictions. Her last 2 seasons at San Francisco, every season at San Francisco, she averaged double figures. And 24-25, before she went down with the injury, she was averaging 13 points and 7.7 rebounds. The year before, 15 points, 10 rebounds. She's probably instantly the best post in the Big Sky. And relative strengths of Dos Santos when she's a great rim runner. She's physically strong. She's north-south, pretty fast, and she has great hands. And relative to, she has like a little bit more like for a woman post, she has a little more of like a stocky type of build. She actually is pretty quick off her feet relative to her frame. So like Dos Santos immediately essentially gives Idaho the best post in the conference.
Outside of Glassney or whatever her name is, Sophie Glass, whatever, the number 12 from Northern Arizona, that gives Idaho another to compete with her. But they on paper looks like one of the best.
Yeah.
Another kind of just quick note, like both these do have connections to Derek Sage and obviously Arthur, and then I believe Denise also might have coached Deborah when she was at her JUCO stop, but I'm not looking at the exact timeline right now though. So there is a lot of different connections to at least 2 of the 3 signings that have been announced so far.
Yeah, so in 23-24, Dos Santos was first team all WCC. This is a gigantic deal for Idaho. There's no way that Dos Santos didn't turn down some likely NIL money to come to Idaho. So that connection I always have to pause for a second, guys. That connection with Moreira at Idaho was obviously instrumental in getting her here. But those 3 together with some of the returners Idaho has, this is a team that's going to be competing for the top of the conference. If Barbosa can be healthy, that's a gigantic deal. So, yeah, obviously we'll continue to monitor how these things go. But this last week has been a very good week for Coach Moreira and the Idaho women's basketball team.
And there's still more they can add. I still believe they still have a few more spots they can fill. So stay on the lookout and make sure you're following and following the coaches and everything. Stay up to date on everything.
Yeah, guys, pretty big. Just to put the final bow on women's basketball here. Obviously, not a lot of fanfare going into the first year of Moreira, especially with the Amy departure. Program not picked particularly high in the Big Sky. Obviously, a hell of a year last year to be third in the Big Sky, mostly the entire season long, and then. Man, really loading up. Really, really excited to see what Moreira. We're gonna get that eventually. Man, very excited to see what he's doing over there. Hopefully, we see Pribble in year 3, kind of taking some of the steps that Moreira is already seeing this team make. Brian and Marten. But gentlemen, that's it for women's basketball. Moving on to some football talk. Guys, we've had a couple practices. We've had a scrimmage. where do you guys want to take spring football as we are vastly approaching the halfway point? It's coming up very quickly. 2 weeks from Friday being the spring game.
Yeah. So Ron, we're at the football talk now, man. So glad you were here for the early part. So Marten, you were at the scrimmage on Saturday.
Yeah.
I've been doing my own research, talking to people close to the program to get some observations, but how about we start ground zero, scrimmage number 1? You're in the stands. The basic questions that we're all having are, one, there's 2 total returners from the defensive 2 deep. So that's essentially a completely blank slate. So we're looking at finding names that are likely contributors, likely starters. And then obviously like seeing how things develop offensively. You, Marten, tend to pay attention to O-line better than virtually anyone. So I want to give you the wheel. Tell us what you saw with scrimmage. But one last thing, guys. Tubs of the Club is essentially spring ball central for Idaho spring football. This is the place you're going to get the most thorough discussion of it. If you like that, tune in live, share the show, and support us at patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. Marten, take it away.
Yeah, it's like O-line wasn't watching just a lot today. This past scrimmage, just because of where I was sitting, it was a little further away, hard to really watch the kind of nitty gritty stuff. It was and it's not like a bad thing because I know they're installing a bunch of stuff. But the big thing that sets me was this defense seems almost is better than last year's, from just a practice standpoint. From this same point last year with Dan Jackson in his first spring ball, they are flying around. They are making plays. They are disrupting. It seemed like somebody else was disrupting a play. A different player was disrupting a play each down, and it wasn't the same player back to back. It was always someone different making plays on this Court Denison defense.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about, so let's just say we're starting defensively. The defense in theory won scrimmage 1. Now the basic reporting out of practice has been it hasn't been like that every week. So like last spring, pretty much persistently the defense beat the shit out of the offense, and the offense turned out eventually fine. And we know that in spring football, it's kind of a bad thing if the defense does not look strong, relatively speaking. But based off reporting out of practice, based off what, Dylan Lane said himself in one of the interviews posted to the University of Idaho Athletics YouTube page, which you guys should check out those videos.
Vandal Athletics on YouTube, please check it out. It's good shit.
Yeah, basic reporting is things are going back and forth a little bit, but defense dominated the practice, the scrimmage this week with one of the names. So one of the things we're trying to figure out, it's like, hey, who are these contributors going to be? I'm going to tell you a name that came up time and time again with people I talked with. And Marten, you in your notes for this brought it up. Donovan Parham. He's a defensive end, so an edge transfer in from Mississippi Valley State. He's a grad student. That guy was a name that I told, hey, that's going to be the focal point of Idaho's defense. I know there's production that needs to be replaced, but Donovan Parham absolutely has been tearing up spring.
Oh yeah, he was like one of the big notable standouts. He was beating Nathan Knappich off the left tackle. He was beaten by anybody that was in front of him. He was, as I put in the notes with Brian and Dallas, he was fucking shit up. Which I think he's probably going to make life hell for Big Sky quarterbacks this fall, I think.
Well, you go back through, I know Dylan Lane has mentioned it. Coach Ford's mentioned him. If you go back across even the last few weeks of Vandal coverage, his name is one of those guys that's popping frequently. So fingers crossed he stays healthy, because pass rusher is obviously an area of maybe not concern, because again, I think we're all on the same page that we think that the Eck era brought in a bunch of recruits, and there's a bunch of talent that we just don't know the names of these guys yet because they haven't had the chance. But there's a bunch of dudes here ready to perform. But Donovan Parham feels like the grad student senior coming in. He's going to be the day one focus point of the pass rush.
Well, and he is really experienced at the FCS level. So this is Idaho's his 4th school. In 2021, he was at Jackson State. By the way, that you guys are Jackson State. That means back in Deion Sanders' time. Parham was at Jackson State, transferred to Robert Morris, where he was a regular contributor in 2023. His last season there had 10 tackles and one half a sack and 1.5 TFLs. Last season at Missouri Valley State, he had 47 tackles, and including 5 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. So the dude has contributed at the FCS level. Looks like he might be taking another step up as far as obviously the Big Sky's a better, tougher conference than the schools we just described, but he's a dude who has played at this level. So, hey, in one way, not shocking that this is one of the dudes who's stepping up, but at the same time, man, if he's as effective during the Big Sky season as he's been described in practice, that's a big deal for Idaho. Another name, Martin, this is another dude on the line that you said popped at practice was Braxton Lawrence.
Yeah, he not as flashy as Parham, but he is his plays were stretching outside. He was making plays and just kind of was overrated. He was always making sure he was he was always at the ball whenever I was paying attention to him or noticed that he was there. And I saw number 25 making plays.
For those curious, yet another person that has been called out. Thomas Ford called him out in the very first catching up with the Vandals video that came out a while back.
So kind of weirdly, I'm not saying that's set in stone, but defensive line, I actually think we have a pretty good idea of who some of the contributors are likely to be. Because we just covered Parham's on one side of the edge. Julian Lee has been cited as another dude who's looking like he's making developmental strides. That put him on the other side of the line, in addition to potentially Braxton Lawrence. And we know the 2 holdovers, Sam Brown and Zach Krotzer, they're going to play for sure because those 2, they were rotational pieces, but essentially played starter-like reps last season with Jason Eck. So we're trying to put cohesively, what is this team going to look like? I think we're starting to see who the defensive line contributors are going to be.
The other one, sorry to jump in there. The other one I would also keep in mind that I didn't see a lot of, but maybe this was I wasn't paying attention. And also Vandal Athletics, if you're watching, get new practice jerseys. They are absolutely terrible and you can't read numbers on them. The other one to kind of I saw I couldn't recognize a little bit was Maurice Himes. The transfer from UW. He played not a lot, but played a little bit at the Pac-12 level, and he's going to be another rotational piece. There's going to be no. I'm not, like Brian said, I'm not concerned about this defensive line anymore. They look good.
That and then Matthias McLean, who was on the team last season. Obviously, this far away, we don't know the exact split, but we just covered there's some depth. There's guys who've contributed elsewhere. There's guys who've contributed some at Idaho. I feel like we actually know more about D-line than maybe we realize, heading into the start of spring ball. Now we have a little bit of clarity. We need to talk, but there's other positions too. So what I've been told, and the secondary, that's almost completely new dudes as far as there's essentially no regular returners that we know from last season's team. I was told a dude to pay attention to is Zachary Spears, transfer from UConn. So another guy who's he's contributed and played elsewhere. What I'd been told about Spears is he has athleticism that kind of makes it a surprise that he's at Idaho. I mean, his pathway was he started at University of Washington, didn't play in 2001 or didn't play in 21 or 22, then transferred to UConn, only played in 3 games, and now he's at Idaho. So Idaho's his third school. He's bounced around a couple FBS places, but the dude, twofold. One, just has the athleticism to say look, whether he's going to be for a fact a starter or a rotational depth piece, we don't know, but you're going to hear Zachary Spears' name during the regular season for a fact. He's also appeared to take on a decent, some leadership roles, which there's a lot of those for a lot of guys are going to have to step up leadership wise in different positions. And Spears is a name that, based off the research I've done, is kind of ringing through on the secondary. Martin, were there any other dudes on the secondary, whether safeties or corners, that you saw that stood out in some sort of way?
I'm going to be honest here. No. And that's just not that I was not paying as much attention, but but also like they weren't getting busted. They weren't getting burned on any plays. I think there's one play to Emerson Cortez Menjivar, but it was like he just beat his guy, and it wasn't like bad positioning or anything by the DB.
Okay. So it's safe to say we know more about the D line than we do about the secondary. Linebacker is another place where that's just going to be a developing story. It sounds like Dylan Lane is getting some first team reps. Is that correct, Marten? Yeah. Sound like Dylan Lane is getting some first team reps, which we saw Dylan get first team reps in his previous seasons. You guys who watch, how depth chart changes. And Idaho had some pretty significant developments from linebackers over the last 2 seasons. But weirdly, Dylan Lane half feels like an old timer because he's been here for the entire time of Eck plus Thomas Ford. But he looks like he's going to see a lot more reps at the linebacker position. And I think that's linebackers in the place we're just going to take some time to see how that sorts out. Any observations at linebackers you have, Marten?
Other than like they hit dudes, and that's all I really got to add is they were making plays and wrapping up tackles.
Which before we shift and talk offensively, now I'm just going broad takeaways. We've been told really good things about Court Dennison. Whether it's people we're talking to, whether it's Dylan Lane in his interview talking about how the defense is looks to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more sophisticated. Looks like they were a little bit, according to early reports, they're trying to disguise things like blitzes a bit more than last season. Court Dennison. And based off people we've talked to, 1, players love the dude. 2, he's really damn smart. And 3, I mean, kind of the ethos of this team has been to do a lot of what the Eck time had, but to probably take up the intensity a notch, and especially on the defensive side of the ball compared to last season. So early returns on Court Dennison as defensive coordinator are Idaho is lucky as hell. And it's weird to think that even though Idaho's last DC is now South Dakota State's head coach, probably an upgrade for Idaho to go from Dan Jackson to Court Dennison. And I don't know, man, I'm not worried about Idaho defensively. Like, we know they should be showing up. They should be looking like they're coming together before the offense, but they are. And in spite of all those new faces, man, I'm just not worried. I think Idaho has a chance to be good defensively this year, similar to how we felt like Idaho would be through the first half of 2024.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about this team at this point, guys. I think we knew going in the defensive line was extremely deep. We knew that going in last year, and then most of those guys ended up leaving and going off to bigger programs. The guys that are still here, we had a pretty good feeling that was a pretty loaded group. Linebacker is there's definitely snaps that are gone, but Isaiah King has played, Dylan Lane has played. There's a couple other Will Cornelson from junior college. I don't remember which one. There's some guys that have played. Thank you. Yeah. It was one of those ones in Texas that I know we've gotten some guys from before. Like Cruz Hepburn has not really played a ton for Idaho, but he's been a college athlete elsewhere. Like, there's a bunch of dudes that have either college experience or experience playing for Idaho. I'm not that worried about linebacker. It's also the same story we have almost every year. Linebacker is probably the easiest of the spots to fill, just in the modern era of football, where a lot of it is you got to play 5 DBs at minimum most of the time, it seems. So it's made the impact of losing linebackers a little bit easier. Paul Moala was awesome, but he left and didn't really see a whole lot of a drop off from Eck and X3 coming in the next year. Defensive back is where things are going to get a little bit weird. Patty Frakes in the comment section. Cruz Hepburn took reps with the 2s at Mike last year, I believe. Defensive back, guys, is where things are going to get weird. Like you said, Brian, Zachary Spears has the talent. He's done the trickle down from the top of the FBS thing, but when you look at the defensive back room, guys, Hayden John is one of the most experienced players on the team, and he has not played a whole lot minus special teams. Nothing against the guy. From everything we're hearing, he's probably going to be one of the leaders of the secondary. But there's no, oh yeah, we've got a guy with 20 games under his belt. It's we're talking about maybe the guys that have the most experience are double-digit games, and certainly not double-digit games in the defense, primarily special teams workers. So that's where things are going to be a little bit weirder. But how do you cover that with an aggressive defense that hopefully is going to be able to disguise blitzes well enough to just put a bunch of quarterback ass on the ground? And that's going to help out a young group of DBs really, really, really quickly, as long as, again, that pass rush can get home to start the year.
Yeah. So before we shift over now, talk offense, just to kind of put a button on it. If you guys missed it, we feel pretty clear on who the contributors on the D line are going to be. We know a little bit about linebacker, but that still has to resolve. And we know probably the least about the secondary, but we're like a week and a half into spring. That has time to sort out. There's some other transfers who've come into the program. So like there is more college experience on the roster. It's just going to take time for that to sort out. And whatever, we still have fall camp, guys. So like, if the basic returns right now are that a team that has this many players turning over defensively is doing fine, I'm more than happy to just sit, relax, and just keep having it trickle in about who's contributing where. One thing I do want to add is Battle Axe Award winner from the scrimmage was Jacob Turagavu, who I'm pretty sure I butchered that. He's a safety from Provo, Utah. Although I will say in the clips, it looked like he was playing more of a strong safety down there with the linebackers. That's the answer question for Captain 58 in the comments section.
With that said, gentlemen, before we get into the offense, if you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been vandal-owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of No Return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway. You can even check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes. Hughes River Expeditions is going to handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now, 406-540-4450. Again, 406-540-4450, or check them out at hughesriver.com. Marten. It didn't really work. I was trying to play off the old. Anyways, offensively, not a great day scrimmage wise. What popped? What didn't pop?
I think it's going to be more, obviously, like goes without saying, Idaho lost a ton on offense this past year. I think the pop for me was just the quarterbacks who were taking reps, the ones were still, I know we'll get into that later today, who was and who wasn't taking reps. It was all kind of spread out evenly. It didn't they weren't like force feeding people. I think Eli was in a no contact jersey, but he was still making Eli Cummings plays. Nate Thomas is still Nate Thomas. When he was getting the ball, he is just running through people and getting 5-6 yards, 10 yards a carry. I think probably the big one the obvious is Emerson Cortez is gonna probably be your number one, if I was to guess right now, just based off of who's returning.
Mm-hmm.
Tight end was kind of an interesting one. I saw Chance Bogan made a few plays. I know I've been kind of soured on him the past couple of years, but he started making some plays during the scrimmage this on Saturday.
Nice.
And there were some the other big one, which I can't remember if I've seen it a lot, and if anybody in this comment section or Brian or Dallas want to comment on it. Another thing that stood out to me was they were doing plays under center, and that was something I've not seen from an Eck offense in a long time, unless it was like a trick play.
When you say they were doing plays under center, what do you mean?
Yeah, like they were like quarterback hand up in the centers, up under there, and just snapping the ball.
Okay.
And not like no shotgun, no pistol offense like Dallas was doing. It was.
Thank you.
It was a sight to behold. Sight to see, I should say.
Okay, so before I go over like some of the wide receiver stuff and quarterback stuff, Martin, look, you're always paying attention to the O-line. What was the starting rotation you saw?
The starting one was Nathan Knappich, left tackle. Nate Azzopardi at left guard. Leighton Vining at center. I believe was Logan Harris at right guard. And I'm already blanking because I'm going to have to look back to everything now.
Henson.
Schniz. Skinner at right guard and Keegan Henson at right tackle. So it's kind of a few new names on the right hand side, but obviously the center and left side has been the same for. I know Nathan didn't play a lot. I mixed them up again. Patrick, I did it again. Like it's Knappich at left tackle, and then Azzopardi at left guard, and then Vining at center.
And then of course Bleem's not playing.
Yeah, Bleem's not playing, or the.
Okay, yeah, Vleem is not playing in the spring. Coach Thomas Ford said that. Tight end Jake Cox is also sitting out the spring, but that's just to get healthy for fall camp. And then, like Patty Frake said, yes, the name that Martin was looking for was Keegan Henson. So,
to fully address Patty's final question, is Vleem still on the roster? Yes, he is still on the roster. Being medically withheld from the spring.
Yeah. So clarify. That was Henson at right tackle. So that's some of the names. We know there's more names, but O-line's one of the things we're piecing together, right? So it's a young group, but there's depth there. If it's a young group, especially new contributors, it's going to take a minute for that to completely gel. So reports of some days the offense looks great, some days the defense beats the shit out of it. We call that an expected finding right now. So quarterback, Martin, what you saw according to, tell us what you saw in the scrimmage at quarterback.
First thing that kind of stood out to me was, I know Thomas Ford had said it was going to be a 4-person race. Obviously, Idis was there for one scrimmage, one practice. So take it with a grain of salt, but these are just my observations. The two quarterbacks running with the ones were Nick Josephek and Jack Wagner, and then Holden B and Rocco Koch not wearing a quarterback jersey. He was taking hits and he was delivering hits too on scramble. So he was live and he was making plays. They were running with the twos.
So let's talk about Josephek Wagner, because that's not a shock that those two were kind of emerging. And Coach Thomas Ford in interviews with SWX also made it pretty clear that, at the start of camp, it was an open competition, but Wagner and Josephek have pretty clearly separated themselves at this point. What stood out about Wagner or Josephek from the scrimmage you saw?
To me, it didn't. There wasn't really a whole lot that stood them apart. I know Wagner still has that arm and he can launch it deep. That was kind of, I'd say the best thing I can say is like what we've already seen about them is what I've seen. So not a whole lot is new. I know Wagner. I know we had some concerns about Wagner not throwing over the middle last year, and he was making some of those throws at press scrimmage. Okay. So he has at least gotten more confident. I'd say more confident, more comfortable with making more throws. So that's like the one change, small change I'd say.
Yeah. So the early returns I've been told kind of match what Martin just said, which is, Wagner threw 55-yard touchdown to Emerson Cortez Menjivar, which was kind of the highlight for the offense. Patty Frake's comment saying QB is so tough to evaluate in practice. Oh, co-signed, but hey, like we the sample info we have is the sample info we have, right? So if you did not tune in last year, or if you missed the not that many snaps Josephek took under center, Nick Josephek doesn't have the same type of arm that Jack Wagner does. But his relative strength was decision making, and his style was a little bit closer like Jack Wagner's.
You mean Jack Lane's?
Yeah, sorry, Jack Lane's. Thank you. More similar to Jack Lane's, where he can make throws, but he's more comfortable trying to pick apart a defense, find holes in the zone, stuff like that. Whereas Wagner's relative strength is He can really stretch a defense. The way for Wagner to improve is to be able to pick a defense apart a little bit better. We did see improvement with that in the second half of the season. So if Marten, if you're saying he's taking more strikes across the middle, that to me is a pretty big deal.
For me, I'm very excited to see what happens. Again, we've covered the quarterbacks at length on this show. Going into last year, talking all about Jack Lane and his expected rise to being the next great Vandal quarterback, to immediately getting hurt and watching the ups and downs of redshirt freshman Wagner, and then redshirt freshman Joseph-Eck, and then the injury, and all of this aside, when you break it down, look, guys, Wagner's the guy that looks like the quarterback. He's 6'4". I'm sure he's not listed at 200 pounds, but I'm guessing he's over that at this point. He will certainly be over that by the time the fall rolls around. And then you have Nick Joseph-Eck, who is listed at 6 foot. I don't even know if he hits that. He looks more like me out there. Wagner's got the cannon. Joseph-Eck is now in number 8, so hopefully he doesn't lose any arm strength by putting the number 8 on. But we'll see what happens there.
It's a deep cut.
That is a deep dead one there, Brian. Shout out to Marten for the beautiful observation as he's cackling in the muted background there. Look, I think it's so hard to evaluate. Like Patty said, it's so hard to evaluate in practice. It's also so hard to evaluate it right now when it's a new coach coming in. Yeah, I mean, yes, he's the old coach, but he's the new coach. Linehan is now the offensive coordinator. He gets to put his stamp on things. Again, guys, we're a week into spring, or a week and a half into spring ball, and 3 years ago we were all sitting here talking about how, man, CJ Jordan's the incumbent. Looks like he's the guy who's got some heat on these balls. He's going to be the guy. And then Giovanni McCoy goes from quarterback 4 to quarterback 1 and wins the Jerry Rice Award, and then is now is about to enter his second year of FBS football. So with all of this said, ride with Jack Wagner, ride with Nick Joseph-Eck. The quarterback might not even be on this roster right now. It could be Coke. It could be B. It could be.
It's not Coke or B, dude. It's not. Like, I know what you're saying, but like, you can tone it down pretending we know nothing. Like, it's not going to be Coke or B at this point. Like, if they're saying those two have clearly risen above, then like it would have to be a significant development that no one would ever gamble on. But let me put it a different way. If the season started tomorrow, Dallas, who are you gambling as a starter?
I mean, Jack Wagner. Jack Wagner, I think, is the starter. If you play a game from now until realistically probably at least the middle of June, it's probably Jack Wagner. Not saying that's what it's going to look like at the beginning of September, but right now it's Jack Wagner.
Yeah, I think so. Tubbs has been pretty much the only place that has covered this thoroughly. Wagner did lose the number 2 job in the middle of last season. We've stressed that that's part of why there has felt like maybe there's uncertainty about what that hierarchy is. From what I've been told, we should kind of throw that uncertainty out the window. It is a competition, and Joseph-Eck and Wagner clearly are the top 2. But honestly, like I think that it's Wagner's job to lose as of today, and Wagner would have to directly lose it, or Joseph-Eck would have to win it to take it away from Wagner. Now, if the portal is open, of course. So like if another dude comes in, that changes our math. But until someone's here, there's nothing to talk about. I think you're right. Season ends. If the season started today, Jack Wagner's starting quarterback. So moving on from quarterback, I don't think there's much to report running back wise, because that's actually one of the positions of continuity. Other than I've been told, in the same way that Eli Cummings was kind of a surprise last year in like the type of shape he came back in after redshirting, I've been told Eli Cummings looks like he's taken another developmental step physically, and he kind of looks like a FBS level back who Idaho's lucky to have. And Marten, your description of Nate Thomas, our takeaway there is more, dude was unhealthy at the end of last season. He's probably healthy now, which based off a guy who's had the knee injury issues he's had, That's a big development. We know Art Williams is here as well. So running back, not that's one of the maybe the single position we know the most about, offense or defensively. So talking wide receivers, I got a piece of information I was a little bit floored to hear. Michael Graves, as of April 8th, healthy and in pads, full contact.
I mean, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to get crazy excited here because we have seen injuries are just part of the game with Michael Graves. But, man, I thought he looked really good against, was it Indiana? I think he had that like 70-yard reception, I think.
That's correct. Yeah.
A couple years ago. Yeah. Like when he's gotten on the field and had the chance to have a ball thrown his way, thought he looked really good. He just, he was Giovanni McCoy's third receiver, so he didn't see the ball a whole lot, and then was obviously not healthy at all last year. So hopefully we get a full healthy year of Michael Graves. That would be a huge boon to, again, you have Cortez Mendovar, who's played a fair amount of snaps. McCraney's a big recruit. A couple other guys were big names. Trace Higgins has some playing time.
Alexander from Montana State.
Exactly, is transferred in from Montana State. But we're circling the deck chairs around the Titanic again in the wide receiver room. Don't panic, because again, what happened last year? Receiving room is totally fine. Yeah, there was the ball dropping issue, but we've covered that. As Patty says in the comment section, if the QB play can be average, Idaho's offense should be just fine. Again, we're pretty confident in the running back room and the offensive line, and that's pretty much done everything for Montana State and honestly the Dakota States for the last few years.
Yeah, so in the wide receiver room, another place I think we're relatively clear on who some of the contributors are. We don't necessarily know the hierarchy, but I just think Michael Graves is kind of a game changer if he can be healthy, because the way he could stretch the field during his 2 years ago, he only had 15 catches, but he was a deep threat that opened up a ton of space for Jermaine Jackson over the middle. So if we can have Michael Graves, I mean, Graves and Jack Wagner they feel like a team that was meant to be. We just need Graves to be healthy. In addition to Graves, we know Emerson Cortez Menjivar, he was a contributor last year. He's going to be this year. Lanyetta Alexander Jr. from Montana State. I've been told to expect you're going to see him as a producer. And then head coach Thomas Ford, we talked about for a minute last time we were on. Davion Superalice has been a guy who, if you are not on the team, you're just watching, has kind of come out of nowhere to essentially put a stamp on some level of contributing coming into
the other one to don't forget about Vandal fans is also Tony Harsty as well. He made quite a few plays as a freshman for, I believe it was Joseph Eck. He made some crutch plays and he had some bad passes, but still, like, another returner that should probably see some more playing time this year with the minutes to give up now.
So, to maybe to close off, or, to start bringing this to a little bit of a head. Offensively, I actually think we know a lot about this team. What we don't know is the hierarchy, but we know what the running back room is. Patty Frakes in the comment section saying Harsty is a dude. Yeah, so Harsty, I thought he was going to contribute a little bit more last season based off of early touches, but I think that if Jack Lane were healthy all of last year, we'd be looking at just a different production from Harsty at the end. So
overall, I think the offensive stats would have been obviously significantly different,
right?
With that,
I mean, Idaho went with Lane under center. They were not, which isn't to go over Lane too much. He's not on the team anymore, so whatever. Have a good time in New Mexico. When the team was able to run what they wanted to, they were one of the better offenses in the Big Sky. Based off what we've heard out of practice, there are some things Ford's doing differently. Marten, you talked about specifically like taking snaps under center is one development. Now, have been told to expect at this point, if this team is going to lean on one thing. It's going to be likely leaning on the ground game, which should probably surprise no one. Thomas Ford's former running backs coach at Idaho and at Oregon State. And so that's his background. And that seems like it should be the relative strength of this team, especially with, Patty Frake's reference quarterback play being okay. And we did see some steps out of Wagner to close the season that will give this offense more versatility. But I just don't think you would look at this Idaho team and say, hey, we know for a fact we have a quarterback we want throwing 40 times a game. So what I've been told relative strength right now for sure is the running back room. And that's where the most experience is and most returning production from last season. So, there's more things we're going to learn. Patty Frake saying snaps under center equal no RPOs, exactly what Jack Wagner needs to be successful. Run the ball, play action, deep shots, which if you've listened to some of the interviews, like Jack Wagner's interview on the Idaho Athletic page, that's what they've been talking about focusing on. There's a ton still for the offense to install between now and mid-late August. So I'm not going to fret about production. But, just going back to that 1,000-mile view, Dallas, what we're looking at offensively is how the hierarchy shakes out. We actually know who a good number of contributors are going to be, with the follow-up question being the same follow-up question we've had every single season during X time 2 is young offensive line, how quickly can they come together?
Yep. I mean, I feel like that's the story of realistically every offensive line in the country. It's the story of honestly, it's the story of offensive line and football just in general, especially nowadays as the NFL has reduced practice time and the NFL is even whichever offensive line can gel the best and the fastest is typically one of the teams that's going to make a run towards the end. We're going to see that year in and year out where it's going to be, hey, awesome. As a party's here for his ninth year on the line. Sweet. We got that position locked in. What the hell's happening elsewhere? I feel like that's just realistically that's what's going to happen. Let's say Aiden gets hurt at Illinois next year and red shirts and Nathan plays well. Who's to say they don't go coming back to the well and try to put the Knappich brothers at left and right tackle for 2026? Like, it's so hard to say, hey, yeah, that guy's going to lock in here for an X amount of time because, again, the portal can steal at any time, it feels. As Patty says in the comment section, good news, this offensive line has more snaps together than almost any line in the conference. What I'm doing a rambling roundabout way of getting to is Dylan Lane in his video. Again, go check out Vandal Athletics on YouTube. In his video after the scrimmage, I believe it was after the scrimmage, said that the guys that are here are really bought in and they feel like, and the teams that do have long-standing, long-run success are the teams that get together and gel the fastest. So it's not even just the offensive line looking to gel. I think, and Dylan spoke about this as kind of one of the leaders of the team now, is building that communication and getting guys to gel as friends, as brothers, as a team. So the fact that Idaho's offensive line is guys that have, we've said, Nathan Knappich does not have the amount of snaps as Aiden did over the last handful of years. As a party's played a bunch. Vining has played a bunch. I don't remember enough about the snap counts of Skinner and Henson, but again, you're talking 3 out of the 5 guys have some significant starting time here. I mean, it's a good start. If you're looking at Idaho and you're looking at half the team left to go to the FBS, the coach left and took a good shot of those dudes with him. And when you look at the names that are still here and the production that exists on this roster, feeling pretty good about it, guys. Again, that defensive back just area is just a no-name zone at the moment, but we know just about everything else. We have a pretty good idea. There's going to be some new faces that we certainly don't know right now, but we have a pretty good idea of who the contributors are going to be in almost every group.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I do want to add further that we just hadn't been able to talk about because, hey, this is all new, is how is Thomas Ford himself as a coach different than Eck? Because he, in his presser, virtually any time Thomas Ford has talked to media when people ask what he's going to do. I mean, he says very nice things about Jason Eck because he should. You guys saw the last 3 years, but also says he wants to do some of his things different. And the observations I have about what looks different in this version of Idaho football with Thomas Ford is Jason Eck was described as very much a CEO, and that he, of course, did get involved. I'm not saying we're not using the idiot version of this definition, but broadly speaking, Jason Eck let his coaches do their job, and he jumped in when he felt like he needed to, and he was more concerned with feeling like he had control of the whole piece. Thomas Ford has described wanting to do, a CEO type of coaching job, but at the same time, he's himself, and Thomas Ford is a teacher, and Thomas Ford is described as, yeah, he does the CEO thing to an extent, but he's getting in there and teaching and correcting. Like, that's just who he is. In interviews, and if you ever meet the dude in person, he's a super nice, super personable guy. He's intense. As a coach, the intensity level, at least from the head coach, has probably, like, at a moment by moment basis at practice, that has gone up. And like Marten says, and I'm assuming Marten in the comments section, lots of naughty language at the practice. If you don't like that, heads up for a certain subsection of our
music.
Probably,
I should say not from Ford. The music that is being played at the practice.
Yeah, but anyway, like the short of it, Thomas Ford, yeah, he's CEO, but he's involved with corrections. That's just who he is. That's probably never going to go away. Which I just find an interesting development of what Thomas Ford's going to be like. After we had Ball Game on the show, and he said, yeah, that's how Ford is at practice. He was one of the guys who got in the most under Jason Eck to make corrections with, and to give pointers to try to make improvements. He was one of the guys doing that the most. Yeah, he's still doing that as head coach.
And I'm thrilled about it. I'm not sitting here trying to rain on the Jason Eck parade because I think he did a fantastic job in his 3 years here. Again, the three best years of my lifetime of Vandal football. But one of the things that people said as kind of a pushback every once in a while was, he does just kind of have a little bit of that car salesman vibe to him a little bit. And I think especially, the way he left, it's very easy to point that back and be like, oh yeah, for sure. He was just, he was blowing smoke up people's asses. I don't believe in any of that shit, but man, what I do see is, man, you're not going to get anything more authentic than Thomas Ford. Love listening to the dude talk. Again, the videos of his coaching and the rest of the guys coaching. There's just a little bit more attitude, I feel like, is maybe the right word from this staff and the way they want to coach and the way they want to play.
It feels like, if we're using an analogy, this is like not 100% correct. Some of what Idaho lost with guys like Rob Orich and Tony Yelk leaving attitude-wise.
Tyler Yelk.
Tyler Yelk. With Orich and Yelk leaving, I feel like the Ford staff has more of that as part of its DNA.
Yeah. Which for me, that's what I'm all about, man. That, like, bring that on, inject that into my veins. Yeah, Dan Jackson's defense, I thought did a great job last year for what they did, and the again, that kind of just cover for, keep everything in front of us mentality. But man, the way that the coaches are approaching the practices, the way that they're talking about interviews, the way that the players are talking about them, everything just feels like there's more intention and more purpose behind like everything, between plays, in the play itself. There's just, it feels like every single second has got to be football 100%, which it can be overkill. But man, as Patty Frakes in the comments says, T Ford is an incredible speaker. Man, you hear the guy talk once and you're in for life. Kevin Marshall in the comments, got to have production and win, or that attitude stuff is capital lame, LAME. Fully agree, and that's where it's a fine line to ride, of talking about the defense wanting to be hitting harder and more aggressive, and again, coveraging the blitzes so that you don't know where it's coming pre-snap. All of that is great to say, but again, you got to show the results on the field. But early indications, guys, Vandals might be pretty good again.
Yeah, dude, buy your tickets. Spring game is in a few Fridays. April 25th, I believe.
Sure. That sounds right. Days, numbers. What is it? Is yes, Friday the 25th. The crack research team for Tubs at the Club. Friday the 25th is the spring game. I do not know the time.
6 p.m. 6 p.m. 6 p.m. start time at the Kibby Dome on the 25th.
There we go. 25th, 6 p.m. Kibby Dome. Be there or be square or
that is a Friday, by the way. Just a heads up. So if you want to spend time in Moscow,
pretty good way to do it. Gentlemen, the folks can find us at patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. As Captain 58 says in the comment section, we will look back and be so glad that Eck was here to usher in the Thomas Ford Jr. era. Ford is the guy. 10 years, at least 2 natties, and a statue. That is the energy I am going to approach the rest of my week with. Gentlemen, any final thoughts on the Vandals before we adjourn?
Well, hey, again, Tubs the Club is essentially Spring Ball Central. So tune in next week. We've got a special guest from the Lewiston Tribune to introduce you guys to. We have not been able to talk yet, Dallas, about what I think is the biggest story in FCS football, and FBS football, the catastrophic mistakes Sacramento State is making. By the way, that's Trevor Junt is going to come next week from the Lewiston Tribune. We've still had to push off the Sacramento State news. So look, there's other football stuff to talk about as the men's and women's teams sign players, those rosters come together. We'll cover that too. But if you want spring football talk for Idaho football, this is the best place to be.
Hey, Brian, just to quickly bring up the Sacramento State thing. Again, I think that they're bringing in Brendan Marion and the go-go offense. I think is going to be huge for them. I think that might work out in the FBS, and we'll get into those discussions. But if it doesn't, they do have a former coach with 2 years of FBS Power 4-ish coaching experience that is freshly hot on the market. Just saying, they could go back to that well.
You're, of course, talking about Troy Taylor being fired at Stanford for being, let's just say, not a fantastic colleague.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm more terrified that Troy Taylor will reemerge in Cheney and completely turn that around. But Taylor's also older. So, and he's kind of a Northern Colorado guy, or Northern California guy. Good God. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I am not yet concerned about that. I kind of want to leave Sacramento State as a discussion point for later, other than to say I think that is a catastrophic mistake that Sacramento State is making right now, and I am fine to let someone else sign up for that shit ride. So Stingers down, enjoy it, dude. I guess. Well, that's my other minor thing, but we actually talk about it in full later. Is similar to transfer portal stuff. Like, hey, when a guy's here, I'm all in. When they leave, I officially don't care. Same within the conference. If Sac State's in the Big Sky, like I just want as many good Big Sky teams as possible. I want good things to happen to them. I want them to hire good coaches. If they leave, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't give a shit anymore. So whatever.
Don't get kicked in the ball sack on your way out.
The K is silent.
With that said, gentlemen, we will preview the House settlement. Should be coming in and approved in the next few days. There are some changes with the Big Sky and some announcements that were made we haven't talked about. There's the Balzac State news. All sorts of football to talk next week. Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals?